My beloved child. There are moments when one ordinary question can open a door that has been quietly closed for years. Tonight, imagine standing in a familiar room, hearing the soft sound of your soulmate's voice from across the table, and realizing something in their tone has changed. They are not angry. They are not accusing you. They are simply looking at you with an expression you have never seen before, as though they have discovered a missing piece of a story they thought they already understood. And then they say your daughter's name. Not casually. Not in passing. They pause before saying it, almost as if they are choosing their words carefully. Your heart tightens because you immediately wonder what they could possibly have learned. What could your daughter have said? What could someone have told them? And why does your soulmate suddenly seem less interested in the past and more concerned with something that happened long before they ever entered your life? For a moment, the room feels strangely quiet. The clock continues ticking. A car passes outside. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks and then everything becomes still again. Yet inside that silence, 1,000 possibilities begin racing through your mind. Your soulmate finally leans closer. I need to ask you something, they say. But the question does not come immediately. Instead, they look down at the table, gather themselves, and quietly admit, I heard something about your daughter today. Those words land differently than you expected. Because you know your daughter. You know the parts of her story that she shares and the parts she keeps locked behind a careful smile. You remember the years when she needed you and pretended she did not. You remember the moments when she walked into a room carrying something heavy but insisted everything was fine. You remember the conversations that ended with silence because neither of you knew how to say what you were really feeling. So when your soulmate says they learned something, your first instinct is not curiosity. It is protection. You ask, what did you hear? They hesitate. And that hesitation tells you this is bigger than gossip. They explain that someone mentioned something about your daughter's past, something connected to a period of your life that you rarely discuss. At first, you almost laugh because you assume there must be a misunderstanding. Surely someone has mixed up the details. Surely this is another story that grew larger every time it passed from one person to another. But your soulmate does not smile. Instead, they reach into their pocket and place a small folded piece of paper on the table. You stare at it. Where did you get that? They answer softly, she gave it to me. Now the entire atmosphere changes. Your daughter gave them something. Why? And more importantly, why would she give your soulmate something she had never shown you? Your mind moves through memories at frightening speed. You remember an afternoon years ago when your daughter came home unusually quiet. You remember asking whether something was wrong, and she simply shook her head. You remember a box she kept in the back of a closet. You remember the way she once became uncomfortable when you mentioned a certain name. At the time, you thought those moments were unrelated. Now they seem connected. Your soulmate unfolds the paper, but before reading it, they look directly into your eyes. She told me not to ask you about this unless I was ready to hear the whole story. Your breath catches. The whole story of what? They do not answer. Instead, they turn the paper around. There are only a few handwritten lines. You recognize your daughter's handwriting immediately. And suddenly, this is no longer about something someone heard. It is about something your daughter deliberately chose to reveal. You read the first sentence. Then the second. And your chest feels strangely heavy. The note does not accuse you of anything. It does not reveal some terrible betrayal. It says something far more painful. Your daughter had been carrying a question about you for years. A question she was too afraid to ask. You look up. Why didn't she come to me? Your soulmate's expression softens. Because she thought she was protecting you. Those words stop you completely. Protecting you? From what? Your soulmate explains that your daughter recently began looking through old belongings after finding something unexpected among family papers. At first, she thought it was meaningless. Then she noticed a date. Then a name. Then a connection that made her question a memory from childhood. But there is something your soulmate has not told you yet. They know where your daughter found it. And they know why she decided to show them first. The silence stretches between you. You suddenly realize that your soulmate is not asking these questions because they doubt you. They are asking because they are beginning to understand how much your daughter has quietly carried. And perhaps that is why their next words hurt more than anything else. She thinks you sacrificed something for her. You stare at them. What does she mean? Your soulmate looks toward the window. She believes there was a moment in your life when you had another choice. Another choice. The phrase seems to echo inside your mind. You remember the years when money was tight, when opportunities disappeared, when you made decisions without telling anyone because someone had to keep the family moving forward. You remember saying no to things you wanted. You remember walking away from a future that looked easier because your daughter needed stability. But you had never called those decisions sacrifices. You simply called them life. Your soulmate studies your face. Did you ever give something up without telling her why? You do not answer immediately. Because suddenly you know exactly what they are talking about. There was one decision. One summer. One envelope. One opportunity that could have changed everything. And your daughter had been closer to that truth than you ever realized. You thought you buried that chapter long ago. Apparently, you only hid it from her. Your soulmate reaches across the table, not to comfort you, but to stop you from looking away. She knows about the envelope, they whisper. Your heart drops. The envelope. You had not heard that word connected to that moment in years. How? Your soulmate shakes their head. That isn't the part you need to understand yet. You feel frustration rising now, mixed with something deeper. What does she think happened? Your soulmate takes a slow breath. She thinks you chose her over the life you were supposed to have. The room becomes painfully quiet. You close your eyes for a moment. Because the truth is, you did. But there is something your daughter does not know. Something even your soulmate has only just begun to understand. The choice you made all those years ago was never the sacrifice everyone assumed it was. There was another reason you walked away. A reason you kept hidden because you believed knowing it would only burden your daughter. And when your soulmate finally reveals the last line of the note, you realize your daughter has somehow discovered the one detail you prayed would remain buried forever. The final sentence reads, "I need to know if Mom walked away from that life because of me, or because she was trying to save me from someone." You look up at your soulmate. They are already watching you. And for the first time, neither of you speaks. Because the question your daughter has asked is not really about the past. It is about a person whose name you have not said aloud in years. And your soulmate has just discovered that person may still be connected to your family's story. The name does not come. Not yet. Your soulmate remains silent, watching the realization move across your face. They can see that something has shifted inside you, something deeper than surprise. You are no longer trying to understand what your daughter discovered. You are trying to understand how close she has come to a truth you spent years protecting her from. Finally, your soulmate asks, "Who was that person?" You look toward the window. For several seconds, you hear nothing but the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant movement of traffic outside. You could give them a name. You could explain everything. You could finally open the door to that chapter of your life. But you remember the promise you made. Not to your soulmate. Not even to yourself. To your daughter. Years ago, when she was still young enough to believe every problem could be solved by holding your hand, you promised her that some things from the past would never become her burden. You kept that promise. Perhaps too well. Because now she is old enough to find the pieces herself. Your soulmate reaches for the folded note again. "There's something else she told me." You turn toward them. She said she remembers a night when you came home crying. Your stomach tightens. You had forgotten that she could remember. You had convinced yourself she was too young to understand what she saw. But children remember more than adults realize. They may not understand the meaning of a trembling voice or a locked drawer or a suitcase left beside a door, but they remember the atmosphere. They remember when the person they trust suddenly becomes distant. They remember the night the house felt different. Your daughter remembered. And apparently, she had spent years trying to understand why. Your soulmate continues. "She told me that the next morning, you acted like nothing happened. A painful truth settles over you. You had. You made breakfast. You packed her things. You smiled. You asked about school. You behaved as though the previous night had never existed. Not because you were pretending nothing mattered. Because you were terrified that if she saw how frightened you were, she would become frightened too." Your soulmate lowers their voice. She doesn't think you lied to her because you didn't love her. You look at them. She thinks you lied because you loved her too much. Those words reach somewhere inside you that you had kept untouched for years. And suddenly, the question changes. This is no longer about whether your daughter should have known. It is about whether keeping her safe also kept her from understanding you. Your soulmate tells you that your daughter has been asking questions recently. Not dramatic questions. Not angry ones. Quiet questions. The kind people ask when they have already discovered enough to know there is more. She asked why an old photograph was missing from a family album. She asked why one particular address had been crossed out on an old envelope. She asked why you never spoke about a certain year. And then she asked the question that made your soulmate realize this was no ordinary curiosity. Was my mother afraid of someone? You swallow hard. Because the answer is complicated. You were afraid. But not in the way your daughter imagines. You were afraid of losing control of your own life. Afraid of repeating someone else's mistakes. Afraid of bringing an old conflict into your daughter's future. Afraid that one wrong decision could place her in the middle of something she had never chosen. Most of all, you were afraid that if she ever learned the full story, she would believe her childhood had been built around a secret. Your soulmate studies you carefully. She doesn't want revenge, they say. That surprises you. She wants understanding. Those words change something. For years, you imagined the truth as a storm that would destroy whatever peace your family had managed to build. But perhaps the truth is not always a storm. Perhaps sometimes it is simply a locked room that needs someone brave enough to turn the handle. Your soulmate reaches into a bag beside the chair. I brought something else. Your pulse quickens. They place an old photograph on the table. It is worn around the edges. You recognize the location immediately. The building. The doorway. The exact place where everything changed. But there is something in the photograph you have never seen before. In the background stands a person. Partially hidden. Watching. Your eyes narrow. You lean closer. You know that face. You had not seen it in decades. And yet recognition arrives instantly. Your soulmate watches you carefully. This was found with the papers your daughter discovered. You whisper the name. For the first time, your soulmate hears it. And their expression changes. Because they realize the person connected to your past was not simply someone you walked away from. That person had been watching over the edge of your life long after you thought the chapter was finished. You pick up the photograph with trembling fingers. There is handwriting on the back. A date. A short sentence. And initials. Your daughter's initials. You stare at them. That can't be right. Your soulmate asks why. You turn the photograph over again. The initials weren't there when I kept this. Your soulmate goes still. Then who added them? You don't know. And that uncertainty is more unsettling than anything else. Because suddenly there are three timelines colliding. Your past. Your daughter's discovery. And something happening now. Your soulmate tells you that your daughter did not find the photograph in the place where you stored the old documents. She found it somewhere else. Somewhere much closer to home. A place where neither of you would have expected anyone to hide it. Your mind races through every room, every drawer, every box. Then your soulmate says the words that make your heart stop. She found it inside something that belonged to you. You stare at them. Inside what? They hesitate. Your old suitcase. The room seems to shrink. You remember that suitcase. You had not opened it in years. You thought it contained nothing but clothes, old papers, and a few things you could not bring yourself to throw away. But now you remember something else. There was a hidden compartment. A small one. One you had forgotten existed. And suddenly you understand why your daughter had gone to your soulmate instead of coming directly to you. She had already found something. Something you never intended anyone to find. Your soulmate opens the photograph again. There was a second note. You look up. Where is it? They reach slowly into the bag. But before handing it to you, they say, your daughter didn't write this one. You feel the air leave your lungs. The paper is old. Much older than the message she gave your soulmate. You unfold it. The handwriting is unmistakable. It belongs to the person from the photograph. And the first sentence reads, if you're reading this, then she finally knows enough to come looking for the truth. Your hands become still. Your soulmate asks if you want them to keep reading. You shake your head. No. Because you already know what the next line will do. It will take the story somewhere you never wanted it to go. Still, you cannot stop yourself. You read the second sentence. Then the third. And suddenly, the secret you thought you were protecting your daughter from becomes something far more complicated. The person who wrote the note was not threatening you. They were apologizing. For something that happened before your daughter was born. Something involving a decision you had always believed was yours alone. Your soulmate looks at you. Why would they apologize for your decision? You stare at the page. Because now you remember. You remember the conversation. You remember the offer. You remember the promise. And most painfully, you remember that you were never given the complete truth either. The person you thought you were protecting your daughter from had once warned you about someone else. Someone you never suspected. Someone who had been much closer to your family than you realized. Your daughter may have discovered the first piece. Your soulmate now holds the second. And you suddenly understand why the old photograph was hidden. It was never meant to remind you of the past. It was meant to identify someone. Someone who had been standing behind you all those years ago. Someone whose identity you are now beginning to recognize. Your soulmate looks at the photograph one more time. Then they whisper. I think your daughter has been asking the wrong question. You look at them. What should she be asking? They turn the photograph toward you. Their finger rests on the figure in the background. She shouldn't be asking why you left. A pause. She should be asking who wanted you to leave. And before you can respond, your phone lights up on the table. A message from your daughter. Only 6 words. I know who was behind you. You stare at the message until the words begin to blur. I know who was behind you. For one suspended moment, you are not sitting in your home anymore. You are standing inside an old memory, back beneath the pale light of that forgotten building, hearing a voice from a life you thought had ended. You remember the doorway. You remember the envelope. You remember the decision that changed everything. But now there is something you never understood. Your daughter had not been searching for the person who caused you to leave. She had been searching for the person who helped you leave. You immediately call her. The phone rings once. Twice. Then she answers. Mom? Her voice is calm, but you can hear that she has been crying. You close your eyes. Where are you? There is a pause. I'm at home. Your soulmate sits beside you, completely silent, allowing you to have the conversation you should have had years ago. You ask her the question you have been afraid to ask. What did you find? Your daughter breathes slowly. The truth. 2 simple words. Yet somehow they carry the weight of an entire childhood. She tells you she found the photograph inside your old suitcase, exactly as your soulmate explained. But she also found something else tucked beneath the lining. A letter. Not the old letter you just read. A letter you wrote. To her. Years ago. You feel your chest tighten. You had forgotten it existed. Your daughter tells you she never opened it at first because she was afraid it would feel like invading something private. But after seeing the photograph, she couldn't ignore the questions anymore. Then she says something you never expected. I didn't read it because I wanted to know what you hid from me. You wait. I read it because I wanted to know what you were trying to protect me from. Your eyes fill with tears. And suddenly, the entire story begins to change. You explain what happened that night. Not everything at once. Just enough for her to understand. Years before she was old enough to remember, someone close to your family had tried to manipulate a major decision in your life. They wanted you to believe that leaving was the only way to keep your daughter safe. They presented themselves as the person who knew what was best. But you eventually discovered something was wrong. The information you had been given was incomplete. The warnings had been exaggerated. And the person you feared was not the person you should have feared. The real danger had been the deception itself. Someone had wanted you isolated. Someone had wanted you to believe you had no choices. And when you finally realized what was happening, you walked away not because someone forced you, but because you understood that your daughter deserved a life untouched by that manipulation. Your daughter listens quietly. Then she asks, "Why didn't you tell me?" You look down at your hands. "Because I wanted you to grow up without carrying my fear." There is silence. Then she says something that breaks your heart in the gentlest possible way. "But Mom, I wasn't afraid of your past." You lift your eyes. "I was afraid you didn't trust me enough to let me know you." That sentence reaches deeper than any accusation could have. You realize that protecting someone and trusting someone are not always the same thing. Sometimes love builds a shelter. Sometimes love must eventually open the door. Your soulmate watches you with tears in their eyes. They finally understand why your daughter brought the evidence to them first. She wasn't trying to go around you. She was trying to find someone who could help her approach you without turning the conversation into another round. And that is when your soulmate tells you something unexpected. "She asked me one more thing." You turn toward them. "What?" They smile through the emotion in their eyes. "She asked whether I loved you enough to stay when I learned the truth." The room becomes still. You look at your soulmate. For a moment, you cannot speak. Because that question reveals what your daughter had truly been testing. Not your past. Not your decisions. Not even your secrets. She wanted to know whether the person who loved you would remain when your history became complicated. Your soulmate reaches for your hand. I told her there was nothing in your past that could make me value you less. Your eyes close. And for the first time that evening, the tension begins to loosen. Not because every unanswered question has disappeared. Because the truth is finally being carried together instead of alone. Your daughter asks whether she can come over. You tell her yes. Minutes later, you hear a car pull into the driveway. Your heart begins pounding again. The front door opens. She walks inside. For a moment, neither of you moves. You see the little girl you once carried. You see the teenager who once slammed a door because she didn't know how to explain what she felt. You see the young woman standing before you now, holding pieces of a history she was finally old enough to understand. She walks toward you. Then she stops. I thought I was going to be angry, she whispers. You nod. I thought you might be. She shakes her head. I was angry at the silence. Those words are honest. And they are exactly what you needed to hear. You reach for her. She steps forward. The embrace is not dramatic. There is no perfect speech. No magical sentence that erases years of unanswered questions. There is simply a mother holding her daughter while both of them finally understand something they had misunderstood for a long time. The past cannot be changed. But the meaning of the past can change when the truth is finally spoken. After a while, your daughter pulls away. She wipes her tears and looks toward the old photograph. There is one thing I still don't understand. You smile faintly. What? She points to the figure standing behind you. Who told you to look there? You follow her finger. And then you realize something. The person in the photograph was not the one who betrayed you. They were the person who tried to warn you. The apology letter confirms it. Years ago, they had discovered what was happening and attempted to reach you. But the message never arrived. It had been intercepted. That was why you never understood their warning. That was why you believed they had abandoned you. And that was why the photograph had remained hidden for so long. Your daughter looks at you. So all these years. You finished the sentence for her. I thought I was alone because I didn't know someone had been trying to help. She nods slowly. Your soulmate looks at the photograph. Maybe that was the real secret. You understand. The story was never ultimately about betrayal. It was about misdirected fear. A missing message. A misunderstood decision. A daughter who grew up believing her mother had hidden something because she was ashamed. And a mother who believed silence was the highest form of protection. Neither of you was wrong for loving the way you knew how. You simply didn't yet know how to love each other with the truth. Your daughter takes your hand. I don't need you to explain every detail tonight. You look at her. What do you need? She smiles through her tears. I just need you to stop carrying it by yourself. And something inside you finally releases. Not because the past has vanished. Because it no longer has the power to separate you. Your soulmate places the photograph back on the table. The old chapter remains there, but it no longer feels like a threat. It feels like evidence of how far you have all come. And perhaps that is the deepest revelation of this entire story. Sometimes the thing we fear will destroy our relationships is the very truth that teaches us how to love each other more honestly. Your daughter did not discover a reason to walk away from you. She discovered the reason you had spent so many years trying to protect her. Your soulmate did not discover something that made them question your worth. They discovered the depth of everything you had survived without asking anyone to carry it for you. And you discovered something too. You were never required to be the unbreakable one forever. There comes a moment when the people you love deserve the chance to stand beside you. Not because you are weak. Because love is not meant to be a one-person burden. That night, the three of you sit together. The old photograph remains on the table. The letter lies beside it. But nobody is staring at them anymore. You are talking. Really talking. Your daughter asks questions. You answer the ones you can. Your soulmate listens. And whenever the conversation becomes difficult, nobody runs. That is the victory. Not that the past became beautiful. Not that every painful memory suddenly disappeared. But that the truth finally became safe enough to share. Before the night ends, your daughter leans against you and whispers, "I think I finally understand." You ask what she understands. She looks at you. You didn't choose a smaller life. She pauses. You chose the life where I could become who I was supposed to be. Your eyes fill again. And this time, you do not hide the tears. Because she finally knows. The sacrifices were never the whole story. The silence was never the whole story. The old photograph was never the whole story. Love was. Love was the thread running through every difficult decision, every unanswered question, every year when you wondered whether keeping quiet had been the right choice. And now that thread has brought all three of you back to the same table. The mystery that once divided your memories has become a doorway into something new. Understanding. Forgiveness. Trust. And a future where your daughter no longer has to wonder what you were protecting her from. She knows. You were protecting her future. And now, finally, you are allowing her to help protect your heart. So if this fictional story found a quiet place inside you, remember this. Not every secret is born from deception. Sometimes silence is born from love that has not yet learned how to speak. And sometimes the greatest healing begins when someone finally says, "You don't have to carry this alone anymore." May your heart be given peace where it has known uncertainty. May the people who truly love you recognize the battles you never had words for. May old misunderstandings lose their power over your future. May the relationships meant to remain in your life become stronger through honesty, patience, and grace. And may every painful chapter you once thought would define you become proof of how much love, courage, and wisdom you gained along the way. If this story touched something in your heart, stay connected for more cinematic spiritual stories of love, healing, destiny, and hope. And if someone you love needs the reminder that they do not have to carry everything alone, share this message with them. Sometimes one story arrives at exactly the right moment. And sometimes, the truth we were most afraid to hear becomes the beginning of the peace we were waiting for.